Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Prabhupada Jai. Okay, so Om Ganat Timirandasha Garanjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Chigave Namaha. So today's the last day we're going to be speaking here, and of course we're going to continue with questions and answers. I just wanted to start off with one particular thing that happened to me this morning. One of the devotees spoke to me this morning, one of the many devotees, and he said to me, it's very interesting, he said to me because he was wearing Western clothes, the other devotees were considering him to be like second class. And I said, Hare Krishna. So, what I wanted to address, I'm not going to talk about him specifically, is what is Krishna consciousness? Krishna consciousness wasn't Chandrasekhar spoken. Chandrasekhar, he's in your face, he doesn't care. What is it? I couldn't get, I'm a Hare Krishna and I couldn't be prouder, and I'm in your face and I'm going to chant a little louder. So, but many people are not like that. Many people are shy, or they're feeling that they're considered not so good because they're not dressed up as a Hare Krishna with the bed sheets and everything like that. So, it's a problem. It's a problem for us in two ways. One problem is that it's keeping us from expanding our movement. That's a big problem. But the second problem is that we tend to see things very externally. Shh. How do you go? Shh. Por favor. Or how do you say keep quiet?
Molim vas tišinu.
Mornano Sheno? Shena. Shena. One time I was giving class in India, and they said, how do you say to people keep quiet? And they said, we use this word, chuparo, which means basically, I didn't know it means shut up. So when I used it, everybody said, oh my God. So we tend to see things very externally, and we don't understand that the real Krishna consciousness is something that's internal. As we mentioned yesterday, the day before, it's Jivadoy, and what was the other one? Does anyone remember? Namaruchi, those two things. Jivadoy and Namaruchi. And when we see things externally, then we tend to become very proud. We were very proud. You know, I have my Hare Krishna tilak. Hope I have tilak. Yeah. I have my Hare Krishna tilak, my special neck beads, and everything like that, and my Brahman thread, and I'm better than the rest of you. So that's a problem, because a devotee is supposed to be paradukaduki. Paradukaduki means to consider others, their happiness, their stress, their lives, everything else to be equally important to your life, like that. To consider everyone to be brother and sister. And so it goes against Krishna consciousness if we simply see things externally. It's also a Shudra tendency. It's not a Brahman tendency. Brahman tendency is Vidya Vinaya Samkwane Brahmani Gavihastani Shuni Chaiva Svapake Cha Pandita Samadarshana. That one sees with equal vision learned, gentle sage, a dog eater, elephant, and everything like that, what to speak of all of the human beings. So as long as we see people externally, you know, the men, women, doties, no doties, devotees, demons, whatever, then we're basically on the Kanishta platform of devotional service. And we're not able to progress very, very quickly in devotional service. So anyway, that was my message for today, which is see things internally. How much love people have for each other, and how much love people have for the holy name. That's it. Even in the Bible, Jesus Christ said, you know, there's two rules. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and all thy might, and do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And actually, if someone's on the Krishna Adhikari platform, they say, do unto others before they do it to you. You understand the difference? So we say, do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. So this is very, very important. So treat others, everyone should be treated with great respect and love, regardless of how they dress, how they look, whether old, young, man, woman, child, whatever. And that's Krishna consciousness. Try to remember that. Okay, so now we're going to be open for questions. Questions, comments, problems. Yes?
Thank you. So,
Microphone. Microphone.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So, actually, there is this. What you said last is the about this what Jesus said. So it also reminds me of. Don't mind me. I don't want to etiquette any Americans or something, but I know like that there is a kind of mentality that attack is the best defense.
Yeah.
So also in some other countries in the world. So anyway, yes. So anyway, like I think this is to do with this when you are. I don't want to also again offend any grihastas, but when you are like,
You've already offended people from a certain nationality. You've offended the grihastas. Go ahead.
Yes, so I think there is this tendency when we are overly overwhelmed with the mode of passion that we seem to be overly defensive. So maybe can you please elaborate on this or comment on this
Yeah, and that's Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita. He says one has a worldview in the mode of passion. One sees different living entities, not only different living entities, but everybody is essentially different. That's the mode of passion. That's Krishna's description of the mode of passion. And in the mode of goodness, one sees one underlying spiritual principle that's connected to every living entity. In the mode of passion, you see friends and enemies. People who are like us, and people who are not like us. That's mode of passion. And in the mode of goodness, you see everyone as your family member. First-class God consciousness as Saint Francis of Assisi. Some of you may have heard of him, a famous Christian saint. He said that he sees everyone as brothers and sisters. So Prabhupada said, that's first-class God consciousness. So the idea is to move to the mode of goodness and not see the physical differentiation between different living entities and not consider people to be enemies. So, like you have the example in Christianity of Jesus Christ saying, if someone hits you on the cheek, what do you do? Does anyone know? Oh. What do you do? Turn the other cheek. And you have the example of Haridas Thakur, who was being beaten in 22 marketplaces by the Muslims, and what did he do? He prayed for their benefit. I mean, don't try to imitate him. But, that's Krishna consciousness. Not considering anyone to be your enemy. And Prahlad Maharaj, when he was going to school with Sandanamarka, his teachers, the sons of Shukracharya, rejected friends and enemies concept. And his father was very upset with him because of that. So, it's something that we have to transcend. That's a Kanishta Adhikari platform. On the Majjhima Adhikari platform, of course, one does see the differences in which people act and interacts with them differently. And he sees devotees, envious, the innocent, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But still he sees the inherent equality, that is, they're all equal, except for God. God's far beyond that. But he still sees the equality of all living entities. And that's the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Samat sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. Brahma bhuta prasanatma shochati nakamshati samat. Same thing. The one who is on the Brahman platform, samat sarveshu bhuteshu. It's interesting. Generally, devotees don't use that verse to illustrate this point, but bhuteshu means all living entities. Samat, the same. Sarveshu, all. So, samat sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. That someone who sees all living entities equally, he can achieve Krishna consciousness. So that has to be our internal vision. Even though we act with different people differently, but internally we just have to have love for everybody. Okay? And don't consider anyone second class just because they dress a different way. It's like your dhoti's a different color. That's weird! I'm just joking.
I have it darker just because of this prasadam thing, so it doesn't...
Oh yeah, so it doesn't get messed up with prasad. It's practical. At least it's not purple. Then I would worry about you.
Okay.
So, anyways, that's the point. Okay, more questions here. Yes. Microphone.
Hare Krishna. I have a very practical question about timing, chanting the rounds. When you're chanting the rounds, if you want to chant them in one piece, what do you think about timing it? Like, make
How many minutes you chant around?
Yeah, and just seeing how long time does it take, and keeping it.
Yeah, you can do that. How fast round do you chant?
Maybe about 7 minutes.
7 minutes is normal.
But what do you think about the idea of timing it just to see, if we are in, in the frame, that we're not spacing out and things like that?
You can do that if it helps.
Yeah, so it's not...
Yeah, if it helps. There's nothing wrong with it. And usually after you set a certain pattern, most devotees, when they chant, they have trouble breathing. This may be a problem for many people, because they go Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, like that. Does anyone have that trouble? Does somebody have that trouble? Not so much. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and they get. And the oxygen in their blood drops down, and that's why they fall asleep.
I actually chant even when I'm inhaling, so...
Yeah, that's the point. That was what I was going to say. That you could chant japa while you're inhaling. Of course, it has to be softer. You can't chant loud japa like that, or else you die. But Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, like that. So that's... that way, if you chant japa while you're inhaling, you can chant as fast as 5-minute rounds. When you just try it sometime. But I'm not saying that everybody has to chant 5-minute rounds. Whatever is good for you. Okay?
It was mainly for me, because I got attached to this now, to kind of chant in one piece, and then to being settled down and be focused. And then I'm feeling is there a danger with it?
No.
Okay, good.
As long as you focus, whatever helps you be focused. For some people, chanting sitting down is very good. Other people, chanting walking is very good. It's not against our principles to chant and walk. Prabhupada did. In fact, there's been some studies that when people walk at the same time, they can be more concentrated because there's more blood flowing in their veins. So, whatever works. Yeah, if you can. I know one devotee who chants hanging upside down. He has one of those inversion things on his door. He hangs upside down from his door. And he chants. Of course, one time I made a mistake. I went into his room and opened his door. And almost killed him. So, be careful. whatever works, whatever way you can get yourself to chant and be attentive. The main thing is to chant with the heart. The external technique is not the important thing. The main thing is to be thinking of why you're chanting, what the meaning of the mantra is, and praying to Krishna while you're chanting. The chanting is actually a prayer. Please engage me in your service, Krishna, but you could be praying for the benefit of all living entities. You can be praying for the benefit of your children. You can be praying for the benefit of humanity. You can be praying for Krishna to empower you to preach Krishna consciousness. And that way you'll be connected. So to me, that's the most important thing. The heart state while you're chanting the holy names. Okay? More questions? Yes. From people we haven't heard from yet. Microphone.
To consider a spiritual master to be ordinary person is offense.
Yes.
But on another hand, he's not God.
That's right.
So how to understand properly when you find some statements which are not easy to swallow? Even in Srila Prabhupada's statements, like women have smaller brain, or Hitler was nice guy, gentleman, or something like that.
Yeah, I understand your question. Don't women have smaller brains? I'm just joking. I want to survive today. So there's something called, it's a technical word called hermeneutics. Anyone's heard of that word before? Hermeneutics, okay. Like, how do you understand Shastra? How do you understand the words of a great saint? Now, the point you made is very important. That a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely dedicated to the service of the Lord, but he's not a pure devotee. But he's not omniscient. He's not omnipresent. He's a servant of God. And he knows what God wants him to know. He doesn't know everything. I mean, one time there was someone who was outside of our movement trying to take devotees away, and he said, basically, I'm omniscient. You know, a member of another moth, I'm not going to mention who it was. And he said, your guru was omniscient too, Prabhupada. But Prabhupada was not omniscient. Prabhupada stated that when he is repeating Shastra, then that's the perfection. But otherwise, Prabhupada is a person. And he has personal tastes and personal opinions. Just like, for example, Srila Prabhupada said that potatoes are the king of all vegetables. Anyone's heard that before? No, Prabhupada said potatoes are the king of all vegetables. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't like potatoes. So that means I'm a demon, right? Because I don't like potatoes. So, that is his personal opinion. Because as a pure devotee, as a person, as a jiva soul, he has personal tastes, right? Otherwise, we're gonna delve into the realm of impersonalism, where we see that Prabhupada is simply, let's say, a radio receiver, Krishna speaking. Okay, Prabhupada say this. Okay, yes sir. Then what that means is that you can never really understand Prabhupada. You're not really connecting with Prabhupada. You're not seeing him as a person. You're seeing him simply as a machine. He's not. He's a person. And that's the beauty of a pure devotee, such as Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, because he personally chooses to serve Krishna. He's expressing himself in an individual way, and he's not materially perfect. Now that may come as a shock to all of you, but It's not. To be materially perfect, you have to be God. Does that explain? So that means hermeneutics. So you have to examine the statements of Srila Prabhupada and compare them, or corroborate them is a better word, with Shastra. Like Prabhupada said, the three standards are Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. So these three things have to coincide. Otherwise, we're going to be victims of something called cognitive dissonance. Has anyone heard that word before? You probably have heard the word. That means, cognitive dissonance means we believe something and we could see that it's not true. I mean, for example, you take the 64 ounces, 32 ounces, which you quoted before. Prabhupada at one time was quoting from his professor at the university, Professor Urquhart, who said that women have 32 ounces of brain substance and men have 64, right? So if you take your brain out, which hopefully you won't do, and put it on a scale, you'll see that it's roughly the same weight as a lady who is approximately the same size. In fact, you will see that women have more interconnections in their brains. Did you know that? There's two halves of the brain. One half is the left half, and the other half is the right half. That's what you understand. And they communicate with each other. The left half, that's the logical brain. Okay? 5 and 5 is 10, 10 and 10 is 20. Okay, you're not the body, I'm spirit, soul. Okay. And the right half of the brain is the emotional half of the brain. Oh, it's so nice here today. That's the right half of the brain. So the ladies have a lot of communication between the two halves, and the men don't. That's why they can be very cruel sometimes. Right? And the ladies are more soft-hearted. Just like you'll see at any religious ceremony, Prabhupada said that there'll be more ladies because they're more soft-hearted. I mean, there's pros and cons to having more interconnections and less interconnections, and I'm not going to get into it at this point about the brain. However, the weight is the same. So how do you deal with that? If you deny reality, that's called cognitive dissonance. And that cognitive dissonance will lead you to insanity after some time. Isn't it? The moon is made of green cheese, blue cheese, sorry. Sorry, I was wrong. Okay. White cheese. Okay. So if I tell you that, and you believe it, I'm a guru, so I must be speaking from the absolute platform. So the moon is made of white cheese?
Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese, better. And that's my statement. And my disciple has to agree with that. All my disciples have to agree with that. And, then if they agree with it and believe it, in spite of all scientific evidence to the contrary, they're going to go crazy after a while. They're going to lose their own ability to discriminate in this world. And so the devotees have to have that sense of discrimination. Prabhupada said, blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. So one has to use their intelligence. It's a good question you ask. Because for many devotees, that's a test of their faith. And when they find some statement of Prabhupada that's objectively about the material world, not true, then they may lose complete faith in Krishna consciousness. And that's not good. One has to see Prabhupada is a person. He has his opinion about things in the material world. What his likes, his dislikes. He was brought up in a certain culture. And and he was taught certain things. I was brought up in a certain culture, and I was taught certain things. And so you have to be able to separate those two aspects. Good question, because a lot of devotees will lose faith when they see the disparity or the dissonance between what, and I'm not just talking about Prabhupada or any of their spiritual masters, what their spiritual master says and what happens in objective reality. You know, if the spiritual master said it's very cold in this room, are the disciples going to agree with that? All right, if I tell you it's very cold, you're in Maya.
Completely.
So, anyway, good question. It's a controversial subject matter, and I suggest that any of you interested in the subject matter look up the word hermeneutics. And the GVC has a committee that's dealing with this hermeneutics right now. We're discussing this very important subject matter. Okay, another non-controversial question.
Hare Krishna. I would like to ask one, I think it's detail, but details are important also. So when we sing bhajans and kirtans, I was told that it is good to chant and then leave audience to repeat. So I have seen many devotees, including, for example, you today, that when you chant, very often you also repeat. So is it something which is, I don't know, something which others should also follow? Or maybe it's just an inspiration, or why?
Well, it's just because I'm in Maya. Sometimes when I chant, I repeat. Sometimes when I chant, I don't repeat. So it's just a question of inspiration. And there's no hard and fast rules. You know, today we were chanting Hare Krishna, and I felt like repeating because I was inspired by the chanting. So I didn't even think about it. I don't think about it. I work by inspiration. Perspiration and inspiration. So, other questions? Yes?
Maharaj, do you have a recipe or a strategy for regaining trust? Specifically in devotees who, after many years of Krishna consciousness, have lost their trust because they've been hurt by devotees, so they know philosophy, they know Krishna is God, they accept that, but they do not want to have anything to do, or very little to do with devotees.
So in other words, how to bring them back
Yes.
to Krishna consciousness. That can best be done on an individual basis. That they have to develop a relationship with one specific, particular devotee who they feel they can trust, and it takes time. Because once one's trust is broken, Prabhupada said one time it's like glass, that if you have a glass and the glass gets broken, you can glue it back together, but it's never the same. So it is very important, first of all, never to do something to lose someone's trust. Because if you're caught, or if any of us are caught in lying or acting uncompassionately or without compassion, it breaks that trust, and it's very hard to get it back. But the only way to get it back, I see, is just an individual reaching out to them and just being trustworthy and loving them. And eventually people will come back. And that's the only strategy I have, is just individual. Because when we're dealing with a group of devotees, there's naturally some people who will betray our trust. A group of people in general. But when we're dealing with a specific individual, just like all of us, we trust certain individuals, but we may not trust everybody. Do you trust everybody in this room? No. But there must be some people in the room you trust, right? Good. So you pick and choose. And you could explain that also to people who are burnt out because they have lost their trust or they have some experience. Explain to them that not all devotees are the same. Some are more advanced than other devotees, and be patient with them, because it takes a long time to regain trust once you've lost trust. A long time. Losing trust is a trauma, so you have this post-traumatic experience. It's like if someone's gotten in an automobile accident. Anyone here ever get in an automobile accident? Okay. So what happens after the accident when you get in the car?
Very careful.
Well, careful, but also what happens? What happens every time, a car passes in front of you?
Trauma.
It's trauma. You freeze up. You go like that. Because that's been your trauma. And so to overcome trauma, it's a question of desensitization, it's a question of time, and that's the only way to bring someone back. Give them time, be loving, give them prasadam, don't expect anything from them. Be nice to them, because sometimes we're nice to someone because we expect something from them. Like if a very rich person came in the room, let's say Bill Gates. Oh, what are you up to? What a nice surprise. You doing all right? I heard about your car accident. We were just talking about car accidents. You're okay. Good. Krishna saved you. So, Bill Gates, I was talking about Bill Gates. So let's say Bill Gates walked in the room. He's very rich, right? No? Yes?
Yes.
So, wouldn't we all get up and just greet him? No? You would. Not because of compassion or anything like that, but because he is who he is, money. Paisa. So, when we approach people, they cannot or they should not get that feeling that we're approaching them for some other purpose. We should be willing to give and not expect anything in return. Okay? Other questions? We're doing questions and answers today. Is that right? Yeah. Chandrasekhar, our Krishna West devotee.
Just this comment, Mark. Just this comment. I was going to ask a question about whether we should feel a little bit disturbed with posters that celebrate our Jagannath Rath Yatra festivals as Festival of India or India Fest. But the question regarding hermeneutics and Prabhupada it pushes me to ask a question on that topic.
Okay.
I agree with what you said, Maharaj, but when it comes to expressing what you just said in terms of the three modes of nature, are we then saying that a pure devotee, a liberated soul like Srila Prabhupada, sometimes speaks under the three modes of nature?
No, we're definitely not saying that. And you see that Srila Prabhupada was never influenced by the three modes of nature. He was always acting and speaking equally. It's not that because Prabhupada liked potatoes, for example, that had to do with the three modes of nature, or Prabhupada said this about women's brains. It was just that Prabhupada, being a Jiva soul, was given that information, and Prabhupada was relying on that information. Because the Jiva soul, the pure devotee, not being omniscient, has to rely on information from other sources. And sometimes those sources, other than the Vedic literatures, other than other pure devotees, those sources are not perfect. I mean, for example, if someone asks me, based on the weather report, what's the weather tomorrow? I have to go to my phone and rely on that source, and they may be wrong, right? That doesn't take away from my particular spiritual level of advancement. It just means that I am quoting from another source, and Prabhupada certainly did that from time to time. Yeah.
But you decided to choose that source. You could find 3 other sources and find...
That's right, but if you have no other source, that choice is there. But it has nothing to do with the 3 modes of nature. It just has to be who the sources of the source of information is. I mean, a lot of the ways that I act, a lot of things I say are because they come from my mother. I'm not saying that's perfect. A lot of our psychology comes from the way that we were brought up, right? That has nothing to do with my Krishna consciousness. And nothing to do with the modes of nature. It's just the way that I was brought up, the way that I talk, my language. Then you'd say, well, because I speak English, I must be in the mode of passion. You know, if I was really transcendental, I wouldn't be speaking Sanskrit today. You could use that same argument. But that's the way I was taught, to speak English. And some of you were taught to speak Croatian or French or whatever.
Thank you. March, since I have the mic, could you answer my first question? It has to do also with the verse this morning, the Bhagavatam, dealing with time, place, and circumstance.
What was the verse? I don't...
The verse was this famous verse where Narada Muni speaks about deity worship and how even in deity worship one can and should consider time and place and circumstance. Okay. And in the purport,
So you're talking about the picture of Lord Jagannath everywhere?
Yeah, like for example, I was in ISKCON Radhareshwar, a fantastic project, I love it.
Yeah.
But I see the poster celebrating the up-and-coming Rath Yatra festival, India Fest. In ISKCON Ukraine, you see this India Fest. We call it Festival of India. And as far as I'm concerned, when you type India on Google, regardless of what India may have been or we believe was thousands of years ago, India today, I don't want to be associated with that. I didn't join ISKCON to represent contemporary India. So am I over-exaggerating in my sort of allergic reaction?
I have to give you my personal opinion. There are many aspects of India that are wonderful, and many aspects of India that have been influenced by invaders that have been in India for the last 2,000 years. For example, a lot of the architecture and other things, the arts and architecture in India, are very much influenced by the Muslims. For example, the kurta, typical example that you always hear, is actually, that's an Arabic word. So, I wouldn't throw out everything from India wholesale. I mean, India is also, as Prabhupada said, the land of religion. And also the land of, let's say, looking for the word, where people accept different religions without fighting over their religions. Except for, of course, the Muslims who came in there. I mean, it's a land where every religion has been accepted traditionally, and people would have philosophical discussions rather than fist fights or violent fights over religion. So there's a lot of wonderful things about India. So in presenting Krishna consciousness, sometimes it is useful to utilize the Indian connection, and sometimes it may not be useful. I was talking to one devotee from Latvia. Everyone's heard of Latvia before? Whatever. And I was explaining, well, what do people think of presenting the festival in India, like you're talking about? And she told me that from their very birth, they've been exposed to India films, for some reason. India culture, India films, and for them it makes them feel very much at home when there's that exposure. So I think utility is the principle. I don't think we should react to something either positively or negatively about India, I think we should just think, what is the best way to bring people to Krishna consciousness? That's my point. If it's using Indian stuff, fine. If it's using Western stuff, fine. If it's using Chinese stuff, fine. Or using a guitar, fine. Using a mridanga, fine. Whatever works. And I'm not going to question on their strategy, whether it works or not, but I think it's a question of strategy. Okay?
Thank you.
I'm not anti-India. I love India, actually. I mean, I spent a lot of time in India, and I love the people. I don't like all the high-rise buildings in India. I don't like what they've done with Vrindavan. It's really bad what they've done with Vrindavan. But, I can relate to different cultures, and so my point is preaching. Preaching is the essence, purity is the force, utility is the principle. So, whatever works. Okay? Other questions? That was an interesting and controversial question. Yes?
Krishna Maharaj. So yesterday you mentioned how important it is to listen to the people outside of the movement in order to communicate Krishna consciousness to them. And also today, at today's morning class, Kadambakanya Swami also mentioned that it is important to, actually we shouldn't hear non-Vaishnava people. We have some time, yeah?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Because
before Maharaj cuts me off. Yeah.
Yeah, so Maharaj also mentioned that it is dangerous to listen to non-Vaishnava. And yesterday you said that we should not reveal our mind to the people outside. But what about listening to them? Could you please define these two different types of listening?
That's interesting. So, obviously, as I said yesterday, we don't reveal our mind or engage in intimate exchanges with people who are not interested in spiritual life or not Vaishnavas. However, in order to understand where someone is at when we're presenting Krishna consciousness, it's important to understand their particular likes, dislikes, propensities, proclivities. Like Prabhupada, said, like, what do you like to do? You can do it for Krishna. So sometimes I ask people, do you like to dance? Like Anuradha here likes to dance. So I asked her, do you like to dance? She said, yes. I said, become a Hare Krishna. Okay, Haribol. Well, it wasn't quite that clear. But it was, it's helpful. There has to be that sort of exchange. But no intimate exchange, no revealing the mind, no hearing unnecessarily because it will pollute the mind. One has to be very careful in protecting their own Krishna consciousness. For example, you have the story of Grandfather Bhishma, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, and Prabhupada attributes their particular stance, that is, fighting on the wrong side of the battle of Kurukshetra, to their eating food cooked in the kitchen of Duryodhana. In fact, in the Mahabharata, it describes that they were possessed because of that impure food that they were eating. What happened, it's an interesting story from the Mahabharata, that Duryodhana at one time was rescued from the Gandharvas by Arjuna. The story in the Mahabharata. And when he was rescued, he got so depressed that he had to take help from Arjuna and the Pandavas to get rescued, that he sat down and was going to fast till death. And as he was fasting, getting ready to leave his body because his whole mood of prestige, everything was completely dissipated, destroyed, he was taken away by the demons. And they gave him a pep talk. And they told him, don't worry, we're going to be able to take over Grandfather Bhishma, Dronacharya, Kripacharya. And so they were able to take them over because they had become contaminated by the modes of nature. Karanam Gunasangasha, Sadasatamajonisha. By contact with the modes of nature. So one has to be very careful. What Prabhupada said one time, one has to be careful, it's to catch a big fish without getting wet. Not that we go fishing, but when we're out there talking to people, we have to be careful not to be drawn into the materialistic consciousness. At the same time, we have to give them an opportunity to speak. We have to get to know them. They have to feel something that we're interested in them in order to bring them to Krishna consciousness. Okay?
Thank you.
So time? Okay, so thank you very much. Maharaj is pulling the hook on me because, not because I did anything wrong, but because we have this Istagosti and talk about the future of the movement in the Balkans, right?
Yes, but we don't use the word Balkans in this
Oh.
area.
What word do we use?
Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia, Serbia.
Where else are we?
What's that?
Why don't we use the word Balkans?
I heard that Balkans was given by Western powers.
Oh.
Balkan means that you divide up. Balkan.
That's true, and Balkanization. They use it, it's an internal designation, they don't have it.
Well, we don't use it much really. They could say for us, like for former Yugoslavia countries, like West Balkans, but we actually in this former Yugoslavia countries, we consider like Balkans like something more like savage.
Oh, okay.
For us, it's more like a little bit savage people from the east.
All right, so what do you prefer?
Well, me personally, I'm okay with the former Yugoslavia or Croatia, Serbia, and Bosnia.
Can we get some small term, a small one-word term?
Former Yugoslavia, ex-Yugoslavia.
For that's a negative. So,
Future Yugoslavia.
New Yugoslavia.
The United Hare Krishna movement.
Hare Krishna Yugoslavia.
let's figure out some designation so it's not so long. Some positive designation. Okay, all praise to the divine grace, to the Prabhupada, to the Prabhupada.